really hope you enjoyed this video. Subscribe, like, and click the bell to be notified of more fantastic music content just like this.
Welcome to the Need to Know Music Show with me, Ronan McManus, here on Switchbox TV. Today I'm joined by an award-nominated vocalist, songwriter, composer, producer, diversity advocate, voice actor and author. 12 singles in 2020 and 9 released in 2019. No sign of stopping anytime soon. What pandemic? Please welcome Lachi. How are you doing?
What pandemic indeed. Hi, how are you? Thank you so much for having me. Wow, what an intro. I'm like, Who did all that? Who did all those things?
Yeah, it's weird when you hear your CV read back to you.
It is a little, yeah. Right.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, it's you've definitely kept yourself busy over the years.
Yes. Yes.
But I wanted to start by just having a quick chat about last year. Obviously, obviously everything kind of ground to a halt in the music business. But it seems like since I think something like 2017 or 2018, you've been doing some top line tracks with producers, which kind of bodes. You can still continue doing that during lockdown. I mean, that's one of the advantages of working that way. I'm assuming you're kind of doing the kind of back and forth thing, remote recording
remotely
thing.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, I was going to say what plans were ruined going into 2020 and or how did it affect you? Generally, how were you last year?
So last year was one of those years where when it started, I had sort of a vision board going, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. Everyone's going to be happy and the world is going to be great because I'm going to accomplish all these things. That was my January. It was funny because I was invited and attended my first Grammy Awards ceremony. Wow. And it was so exciting because that was in January. It was rough because it matched up with the Kobe Bryant passing. And I was thinking, no way, this is going to still be a great year. This was rough, but it's going to be a great year. And then COVID hit right around my birthday. And it was rough. It was rough because I did lose close people in my circle. And being in New York was hit probably the hardest right at the beginning of the pandemic, especially here in the US. And however, for me, I've always sort of been working remotely. When you work as a vocalist and a songwriter, a lot of times, especially in the dance music industry, you're working with people from Europe, you're working with people from Russia. I work with a lot of people from Australia, India, Africa. So a lot of times things are remote and rarely do I fly out unless, it's still within the US. And so when the chaos hit, I would not have been adversely affected because I have my own studio. However, the DJs and producers, ad agencies, labels, they all had to kind of take a big, huge step back due to it. And that did hurt my workflow, but it actually opened up new avenues. Voiceover work came few and far in between. Now it's just a constant thing. My advocacy for my disability awareness and my disability inclusion ramped up a millionfold during the pandemic for a couple of reasons. I mean, I just saw how people in my situation, people with disabilities, were hit so much harder. And because I had a lot more free time, I was able to reach out to a bunch of organizations, get some things in place, and do a ton of speaking engagements because they didn't have to fly me out and I didn't have to worry about my performance or recording schedule. So things became very easy to juggle until they didn't. I'm sure like everything just started piling up once you realized you had so much more time to do everything you wanted. But
because you have you're visually impaired, is that right? You legally blind? Or
yes.
Do you have any vision at all?
So I am essentially completely blind in my right eye, and I have extraordinarily low vision in my left eye, and then I am progressing. So my vision is progressively getting. I'm losing my vision progressively more and more each day. Right. But the funny thing is about it is that the more I lose my vision, the more I am geared and amped up to do like awareness talks, accessibility, inclusion panels, and trainings, because the more I lose my vision, the more I need it. And so I'm here to be a voice for other people that I recognize would also need it too. So.
Yeah, I mean, well, one thing the pandemic brought me was hearing aids.
Okay.
I've always had ear trouble as a child.
Okay.
And funny that I ended up being a professional musician my
Right.
entire life. But but I realized
You love what you love.
I realized when everybody was wearing masks that I couldn't hear them. I realized how much I was relying on lip reading, and COVID turned out that COVID was a world in which I was deaf. I didn't realize how bad it got. So I'd gone to a throat specialist for my singing voice. I had some issues at the start of last year. And then he looked at my ears and referred me to an audiologist. And then I found out that I had this congenital hearing loss, which wasn't related to music, loud music, or anything like that. It was something that was familial. And I ended up with hearing aids completely unexpectedly.
And you didn't know this all your life until now?
No, I mean, there was like, how did you live with this? I was like, I don't know. I just hear what I hear. I don't
exactly.
know. I realized I'd learned to kind of compensate with lip reading, but it wasn't until everybody had masks on
that you realized
see their mouths anymore. I realized what it was. So it was, so yeah. I mean, I always had ear troubles when I was a kid. So I've always kind of been, I've always supported, especially children's deaf charities and things like that. It's always been something that's been got quite close to my heart. But now I sort of found myself in with hearing aids, it's kind of an odd situation to be in. So it's a really great thing to represent people, and especially if you've got a platform. And you're saying it's not entirely unselfish, as you will need these things going forward, but to be able to help so many more people, it's got to be a good thing. So what kind of things have you found yourself doing? What they've been like online, like engagements and that kind of thing? What sort of form has it taken?
So I have found myself speaking at forums, speaking on panels, speaking at trainings. And one of the organizations that I do work closely with is called respectability.org. I'm actually a certified disability and inclusion national speaker for their National Speakers Bureau. So a lot of the time they'll send me out to speak to different organizations and different nonprofits and charities about how to be more inclusive, about where to look, about what to do. It turns out a lot of organizations and nonprofits actually want to be more inclusive. They just don't know how. Like, let's say, for instance, a great example that could sort of apply to you, 14% of nonprofit organizations say the opposite of 14, 86, 86% of nonprofits say they want to be inclusive, yet none of them, a very small percentage of them actually add captions to their videos. Right. And so we have 32 million Americans that are hard of hearing and depend on captions and depend on transcriptions of videos. And the nonprofits, they say they want to be inclusive, but then they don't include it. And it's not because they don't want to, they just didn't even know. It's something so simple and something so ABC, but they were just not aware. So it's those kind of factoids, those kind of numbers that we're going around spreading, just so that people know and are aware, because most people want to be inclusive. They just aren't for whatever reason or another. But I've also been speaking on panels like the one I have coming up, on just race and disability and how it intersects, and things like being a woman with a disability, being an actress with a disability. Just, I've been able to sort of lend my expertise, but even more fun, because I'm a voting Grammy member and because I'm in different organizations that have to do with music, I get to spearhead a lot of talks on disability, diversity, and inclusion when it comes to music. And a lot of musicians, producers, labels are all hearing it for the first time. And I'm really excited that I'm the first person telling them. I mean, they should have known it millions of years ago. I shouldn't just be saying it now, but I do feel honored that I am the one that gets to bring that message to a more national stage when it comes to entertainment and music. Absolutely. And I suppose because of the pandemic, everything got moved online. So geographically speaking, all of the, there's no barrier geographically for you
getting involved in all of these things. You don't have to fly to places and all that, and be there in person.
Like this, look at us.
Like this, exactly. So it's been that. So there's, I mean, if you're looking for a silver lining in what has been a very bad year, there have been some good things to come out of it, and
Yes.
I'm sure that that this is such a great thing that you're doing, and so yeah, I'd like to
Thank you. I mean, I
congratulate
enjoy
you
it.
on that. Yeah, but musically, you carried on going with the with this remote recording, and as you were saying, there was a little bit of a halt because of the sort of labels and that kind of thing. But actually, from your point of view, you were still able to do your part of it. But you said there was some things that happened that were good, or what were you hinting towards there?
Well, I mean, like I said, just because it was such a paradigm shift, it kind of forced me to shift my way of thinking. I had like a certain routine. I had certain people I was working with. I had a day-to-day that I liked. I was doing well, obviously, but once the pandemic hit, it just opened up new avenues of thought and new avenues of like which ways I can, manage my time. New people I can work with, old people that I can, not old, but
Yeah.
friends from the past and things
Yeah.
like that I can reach out to and that I haven't spoken to in forever. And then it turns out, hey, what are you doing? Oh, I'm doing this. Wow, we can actually work together on something. And we had no idea what paths we were on. And now we're connecting. So I was able to really change up a lot of things, very specifically with my advocacy work. That really ramped up a lot. And then just the ability to networking, you would think would have gotten harder because of that. But frankly, it turns out, I always thought I was an extrovert, but it turns out, you know what? I like kind of being not always all up in people's faces. And I do kind of like the whole, like, let's just talk over Zoom and say, hey, I like it actually a little better than phone. And then I'm starting to kind of like it better than like going out. I mean, what girl doesn't like to go out, have a few drinks and have fun? But I mean, this is so much, it's quicker, it's faster, it's more convenient, and it has really ramped up a lot of positive production.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking, you're working globally anyway. I mean, I know you're of Nigerian heritage, is that right?
Yes, I am.
And then you moved around a lot as a child, is that right? You sort of moved around. So do you sort of feel like you've kind of had that kind of, you never sort of been in one place, you've sort of been a bit of a citizen of, you felt anchored in New York where you're based now?
You know what's so funny? I mean, I do have sort of a global for a while.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. And so I had a lot of travel experience as a kid and growing up. And when you travel around a lot with your parents or whatever, you tend to just know how to adapt to things. So that in combination with just like being legally blind, I'm just always adapting to different locations. But you know what? When I moved to New York, girl, this is my home. This is my home. If somebody were to paint a mural of New York and say, this is what New York is all about, I would be in that mural. I would be right in the middle, just standing there right by the bridge. So I rep New York. When everybody left, guess who was just sitting here, right here going like, how y'all gonna leave? Everybody left. And I was like, and I got in so much trouble on Twitter. I said, if you left New York, you're not a New Yorker. And people were like, we don't want to get sick. I'm like, if my baby gets sick, I get sick with her.
Yeah, I love New York. I've been there a few times, and I'm of the Irish heritage, although I'm born in London. So I played a lot of Irish music, and there's a huge Irish community, obviously, and I just loved the
all the brownie points for the praise. But we do have like a thriving Irish bar scene, like especially in Brooklyn. Like, God, on St. Patty's, ugh, I can't even.
Yeah.
It's like I'll be out by 9 p.m. Like I'll be done for the night by 9 p.m. Just.
But I love it's like, I mean, London's very multicultural, and I think there's a real, I mean, I'd certainly feel a real affiliation to other children from immigrant backgrounds. I think it's a real big, and especially in West London where I am, there's a big crossover with the Caribbean community and the Irish community.
Nice.
There's a big. I think there's a real. It's what makes London great, and I think it's also one of New York's strengths as well. Is the diversity and the different cultures that all kind of coexist.
Yes.
And contrary to kind of what you would believe in the greater American political year that 2020 was.
Yes.
I really feel like there's a real kind of it's kind of like the melting pot thing really works in New York. I think it's a real embodiment of that. I find that it affected you musically working in a city like that and living in a city.
Well, a lot of things. I mean, so before I moved to New York, I lived in North Carolina, and I had some ups and downs in North Carolina, but to sum it up, North Carolina is definitely a lot slower than New York. And I don't mean intellectually, I just mean pace wise. And when I moved to New York, I had to quickly figure out, it is a very sink or swim situation, but it is very accepting. You can be anything or anyone. And it's very accepting of who you are, but it's also very exclusive in the sense that it will kind of kick you out and if you don't really know what you're doing. But any musician can come to New York with $1 and a broken guitar and eventually become Bob Dylan. Like it's the kind of city where you can actually just take sand and build a castle. And I learned that, and it's always just been there for me. But one of the main reasons I kind of really love this city is the transportation and the I'm very independent here, like as a blind girl. I can get around, trains connect everywhere. I'm never in a situation where I can't, and then it's so easy to just hail a cab as well. So there's no situation where I can't get to what I need in the city. And that is definitely not the case anywhere else ever. And I will say in terms of transportation, London is also not so bad. And then San Francisco is also pretty good as well. But most places aren't like that. So New York is great for that. And then obviously New York is amazing for the music scene. And I've got to meet the most amazing people and just the most, wacky characters that just, you only live once and you get to meet these wacky characters along the way. New York is great for that.
There certainly are a few wacky characters around. I know I'm still in touch with a lot of them, but yeah, they mostly tend to come to my gigs.
Nice.
So, what was your childhood like? How around a lot, but what was it like musically? What was your musical education?
Musically, I had always been kind of writing and singing as a kid. I wasn't very social growing up just because of my visual impairment. I had trouble settling in. And since we moved around so much, it would take a while for me to settle in and then we would move. But my mom always sort of nourished my musical talent. And my dad was always like, hey, you're going to be an accountant someday, or you're going to be some kind of doctor or lawyer. And when I went to college, I tried it. I actually did very well in accounting. I thought I was actually going to do that. And I performed well on the tests, but dissection, really? You really want me to cut open a thing? No, that's not happening. Sorry, my nails. And so after I graduated, I was, I ended up actually, while I was talking to a counselor, I was like, look, I really love music, but I don't know what to do. I've been in all these little clubs and I've started music groups and stuff here on campus, but I want to pursue music and I don't know what to do. And he was like, move to New York. And so I did. And then that's what happened.
Brilliant. What a brilliant piece of advice.
Right. It's like, oh, just moved to New York. It's like, oh, okay. I literally moved with nothing. I had no money. I just got on a bus, moved to New York, just the clothes on my back and an extra bag of clothes. It's interesting because my sister lived in Queens at that time, but she was out of town. Don't tell her this. I broke into her house and lived in her house for a week until I found my own place. So hopefully she was like, who moved around to China? Who knows? So
Poltergeist.
Right? So yeah, that's my
Just
story.
freaked her out a bit. Yeah, brilliant.
Probably.
But I listened to your 2010 album,
Oh gosh.
and it was a very different sound, of a sort of pop kind of rock sound.
Baby Lachi.
Baby Lachi. Yeah. So what would I mean? So how long from when you landed in New York to when that album came out? How long? What's that time period like? And what were you doing? What were the first gigs like, and that kind of thing?
Yeah. So that was really well. That was interesting because I moved to New York to study music at NYU, right? And so I studied music at NYU for just a couple of years. And while I was still there, I met some other friends that were visually impaired. We met at like a technology camp. And it was interesting because I met a guitar player and he and I became good friends. And then we began to do like little shows around the city together, just little small bars and pubs for fun, and just only invited our friends. And then one day we were like, let's go to South by Southwest. Just who cares? Why? And South by Southwest is a big festival down in Texas. So we went down there.
Austin,
yeah, we went down there, and it was, we ended up booking just a few shows at bars. We didn't get any of the main stage gigs, but it was interesting because before we went, I wrote to a bunch of labels. Like I cold wrote, just, hi, you have no idea who I am. You don't know how I got your email, but who cares? I'm going to be playing at South by Southwest. And if you're in the area, come through. And I wrote my list of shows. Got no response, and kept the smile on my face, did one show. And then, did like 5 shows. And at one of the shows, a A&R agent from Fanatic, which at that time was under EMI Records, came to the show and was like, I love you. I love what you're doing. Here's my card. I'm also in New York. Call me when you get back. And I did. And then they signed us. So we ended up getting signed.
That's really easy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's funny because I know it's so like 90s, right? That never happens anymore.
Well, let's see that in Wayne's World where he comes, the record music comes at the end.
Just walks in and says, "You are famous now."
Hey, Tia Carrera, come aside to my label. Yeah, it's a bit like.
But we did a 1-album deal. It was fun. I still had my day job. I had picked up a day job working at the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and I still had my day job, and we were trying to tour and work and tour, and it was just, working for the government is great because you can just take off as many days as you want, really, but it did start to become impossible. So I eventually had to make the choice, and I was like, all right, I'm going to pursue music full time. I was like, how am I going to pay for my bills? How am I going to pay for healthcare? How am I going to pay for all my equipment that I want? But sometimes when you just jump in head first, it just, you figure it out. And I figured it out, and it happened. It worked out. And it's just been great doing what I love, to be honest.
Fantastic. And then, so you got that first album, was to the label that you signed to?
That was to that label. Yeah. They it was funny. They brought us up to some farm, and they put us in this big sort of kind of haunted mansion with a recording studio in the basement. And
where were you? Upstate, were you?
Yeah, we were upstate. We were in a place called New Paltz, which is, there's just nowhere you can't, there's no transportation. Yeah, there's like cornfields for miles and stuff. And so it was really kind of wacky. I was there with the band. I was there with the producers, and we just sun up to sundown. We wrote songs, and then we recorded them sun up to sundown. And it was like a boot camp, and it was fun. But yeah, we pretty much did the whole album, most of the album that week there in that really kind of haunted
that 1 week.
mansion.
You just basically lived it. You just lived it, and then there's something to be said for that. I mean, I did that with my band for our first album.
Right.
And we just went to Ireland for a week. We actually ended up recording everything in like 3 days, but it was just, we were able to do it night and day. Whereas when you're living in your own house, you've got your own schedule, and things get in the way, and then you know, so it's just kind of nice to take yourself out of your own life and just go. Well, that, and
it also you catch a vibe. You know what I mean? Yeah. You jump onto some sort of thing that you guys all just grab onto, and you
captures
just
captures a moment, doesn't it? Captures a moment in your life. So that album. That album just is a snapshot of that week that you
exactly.
Yeah. So how do you feel listening back to it now?
it's interesting because I'm such a different person and I'm in such a different place that album was very, it was a very sort of self-reflective, sort of internal growth sort of album. And if anybody just sits down and kind of does a discography study on me, they would start to recognize a pattern of, as I got more confident in myself and with the city and with, my career, my music got more confident. And so that first album, I'm not going to say I was non-confident, but you can see the growth, not only in, my vocal skill and my my lyrical skill, but in my just that oomph, that delivery, that chispa really starts to shine as I grow and I continue to collaborate with other artists. But what I will say, I can't knock that album. I mean, it was my first, it was my baby, and it was a real foray into poetry for me. It's a very sort of poetic album, and I do sort of tend away from poetry, and it's a lot more cheeky. I'm sorry, it's a lot less cheeky and a lot more serious. And today I'm very cheeky and I'm just kind of making fun of emotions these days.
I think you're a lot more earnest back then,
right?
Maybe, or
a lot more earnest, a lot more vulnerable, a lot more in touch with my 20-year-old or whatever self. You know what I mean? I was a kid. I was just like going through some emotional phases and stages, and very rocky relationships at the time, very uncertainty in life.
Well,
and
if it's an honest snapshot of where you were, then you can never knock it. Really,
I can honest. Exactly. So, and I do enjoy actually going back and kind of listening to it. It's not. I don't cringe at it.
That's good.
Yeah.
do you ever sing any of those songs anymore? Do you ever do that? Would you?
Not necessarily, because they are so different from my actual thought process. But God, Jesus, I don't
dance
think
remixes. How about dance remixes?
Remix those? Throw them on a trance album. Maybe I might revisit them, but I'm on such a writing kick that
you would step back in time 10 years seems like when would you have time to do that?
Exactly.
That's not, but I think it's those sorts of things are great to look back on and to reflect on how far you come, and also you kind of to step back into that person that you were for a few minutes, and
it is,
I think it's good that you don't cringe at it. It's important that people can recognize it. But also what led up to that album was quite a really disjointed kind of life, and with challenges and everything. You kind of moved around a lot. You'd had the visual impairment, and you'd kind of, maybe it's right that it was a little bit unsettled, or you're still finding your feet with it, because
exactly
that's kind of your life was a bit like that leading up to you settling in New York and finding a home. Maybe
actually you put it very concretely, finding my feet. I like that. I definitely relate to that, and I think it is good for people to kind of go back and look at where they are or were. And a lot of times people like to compare themselves to their competitors, and they get caught up in that, when really they should compare their success to where they were in the past. So for sure.
But then you see we've got the Boss EP where the electronic sound starts to come in. I mean, what was the kind of those 5 years from 2010 to 2015? What have you been doing? What kind of turned you on to the more electronic music? What happened?
Yeah, it was interesting because after I did the one album deal with Fanatic, I took a step back for about 2 years, and I did release a couple of songs, and I actually did a lot of shows, but I wasn't sort of pushing releases too hard.
Shows? What are they? live shows?
Live
with
shows?
Human beings at them?
What? I can't. Oh my God, all my favorite restaurants and bars in my area are slowly shutting down, and it's like depressing the crap out of me. But
anyway, sorry, back to what
I was saying. Let's not go down that route. So I was doing, I wasn't doing many releases, and so eventually I just got reached out to by a Sony producer out in LA, and he was just like, I really like what you're doing. I really like your sound. I like your whole thing. would you like to, come out to LA and record a couple tracks? I was like, I don't know. I had never been to LA, and I had heard of a few of the people that guy had worked with. He had worked with like Lady Gaga and things like that. So I was like, all right, fine. So I went out there, I worked with him, and we just I was out there with him for a while, and we spent the first couple of days just going through songs and going through sounds. And it was interesting because I was, looking at some of the Fiona Apples and the Joni Mitchells, and he was just like, well, would you want to explore something a little more forceful, a little more forward, confident? And he was just going like, women empowerment is big. God, that was back in 2015. He had no idea how big it got. And I was open to it. I was like, okay. And so we looked at a few things, and I was just really drawn to this sort of Katy Perry, sort of Rihanna, sort of like, I'm sexy and badass. And I hadn't really seen myself as like, just a badass, sexy Catwoman type of figure. And so at first I was just super uncomfortable. But as I got into it and just really put my all into it, I really started loving what I was doing. And I was like empowering myself with my own music. And I was like, I love this. I am not stopping this kind of heart pumping, badass, let's get to it type of music. And that's where I started, and that's where I started going, and I loved it. And I mean, the Bossy P was definitely just a start.
Definitely.
Huh?
It suits your voice. I mean, it definitely suits your voice to do that stuff. It's great. I mean, really, really good.
Yeah.
So the Bossy P was the start of all that.
Yes.
And then Rude. We have to talk about Rude.
Rude was a song I co-wrote with actually the same producers. We actually ended up going back. I actually went back out there to work with them again because the Bossy P was just so much fun. And we worked on a couple of songs with an artist named Kendra. And we put together the song Rude among other songs. And one thing went from one thing to another. Managers were like, I like this song, let's send it out. We eventually end up finding ourselves talking to Snoop Dogg's management. And Snoop Dogg was like, oh, I like this, I'm gonna hop on this. And so there we go. And it's so funny. Everybody goes like, how did you, meet Snoop Dogg? Like, how did you find him? I'm like, dude, my manager connected with his manager. It sucks. It's not that interesting of a story.
That's not the story you tell people. That's not the story you tell people.
No, I at a bar, I'll be like, yeah, man, I saw him at the pub. He was like, hey, girl. I was like, you want to be on my track? Boo-boo. He's like, girl, I gotta get on this.
Snoop,
I gotta get on this, girl.
Snoop, if you don't leave me alone, I'm gonna call the cops on you. Leave me alone. Stop harassing me. How many times have I got to tell you? Okay,
leave.
Okay, Snoop, I'll let you have one track. You can be on Rude and that's it. I don't want to see you again. That's the story.
Or like, oh, I snuck into Snoop Dogg's home with a recorder and just recorded him talking to his wife and put that shit on the track.
He's just talking to himself.
Talking to his pipe. Like, hey, yo, baby, why you being so rude? No, I love Snoop Dogg. If you ever happen upon this video, I love it.
I mean, what was that like to hear that song, and like, it must have opened up doors.
Yeah, it was.
At that time, to have something attract that. With,
it was good. One of the things that it ended up really doing for me was it hooked me up to my previous management at the time, which was Gary Salzman, who was sort of a big name in dance and EDM. He caught wind of it, and he was just like, I want to work with that girl. She seems like a lot of fun. I ended up hooking up with just one of his other producers on his team, and he ushered me in, and so I started just getting kind of ushered into bigger places, I guess. Not necessarily because of Rude specifically, but just because of the sort of the different caliber of projects I was getting involved in, just as a songwriter and as a vocalist. Like, I had done a song with Styles P called Living a Lie right around that time. And so both of those songs were actually spinning around right at the same time. And so that did give me a lot of eyes, especially just as a hip hop vocalist, singer, songwriter. And so that opened some doors, and that got me into sort of a bigger management situation, which then in turn opened more doors. And you know how that story goes.
Yeah, but it seems like then you've been sort of steadily just doing top line stuff with producers and just moving. I mean, how does that all come about? Do people just contact you? Is it management? I mean, how does that's because it seems like there's a lot of different names that you're working with there, and it must be really, really interesting to work with different people and hear people's different take on stuff. That must be never a dull moment.
Never a dull moment, indeed. You know, I was lucky enough to work with a production company / label called Black Hole Recordings. They head up the entire trance world. And so they work with guys like Marcus Schultz, Ferry Cornston. They've done things with like Armin van Buuren and Armada. And so I got to get in with those guys because all those names I mentioned are top names in the trance sort of realm. And so once I started working with all of those guys, my name just really started getting bounced around because, I mean, not for nothing, but there's not that many people of my shade and complexion in that realm. And so not to sit there and say, I mean, I hate to say this because it sounds a little weird and ismist, but I did take advantage of the tokenism. I'm like, look, you want some flavor and some soul in your music, all right? So look at his hair. And so, you know, I started.
And I'm disabled, so there you go.
And I'm disabled, like, hello, you get like all the checks on all the boxes.
You get three isms. You get three isms there.
Thank you.
Black blind woman. This is brilliant.
Hello, and I can fly. They don't know that.
You never have to prove that shit. It's fine.
No, so and then, you know, and other producers as well. Like I worked with Matic, who is like huge in D&B. I worked with Hub Records, which is a huge label out in Brazil. So my name has started getting around as a person to go to for just a great top line. And with my background in sort of like harmony and a cappella music and things like that, people tend to come to me just for that vocal texture. And it is really humbling to just like, I'll see somebody forward something to Ben, like to my manager, and go, yeah, I want to work with Lachi. She's the greatest vocalist. And I just kind of see that forwarded, and I'm like, ooh.
That's me. That's going on the poster.
Right. So it is really nice to like have people come to me for my vocals. But we do reach out as well.
That's great. I mean, it seems that you've really sort of carved out your niche, and obviously just proved yourself by just consistently good work. And that's right. And you know, you talk about the tokenism and that kind of thing. It's just, it's going to be the fact that you're just really good at what you do. Right. Because no matter what token you are, if you suck, you suck. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Nobody wants I mean, I'm hoping to carve out a 44-year-old London man with grey hair and a beard, but it's not that sought after. So it turns out. Oh, stop! People, you got lines out the door. But it's you know, what's next for you? I know it seems like this juggernaut just keeps rolling on. Yes. I mean, 12 singles during 2020. That's crazy. That was a bit ambitious, I will admit. Everyone said, Lachi, you are a crazy human. What are you doing? And I said, I'm making music. What are you doing? It was like one a week by the end of the year, wasn't it? It was. I mean, it started coming down to just kind of like, what's a good analogy? You know, when something is stopped up and then the lid kind of comes off and everything comes flushing out. Yeah. Every producer was like, I need to release this now. And another label was like, we need to release this now. And I'm just like, but it was really fun. Like, especially just hearing all my music, just, you know, you love to see yourself on the other side of the spectrum. But what's next? What's next? What's next? A song a day. A song a day. I mean, I am definitely still working on music, of course. I'm working with some of my favorites. So we've kind of taken a step back from outreach, and I'm just working on songs with some of my favorite producers like Yanetro, who I did Time Will Tell with, and Dragon with. We are working with Fisherman, who I did the Marcus Schultz remix with. I'm going to put out another song with him. Putting out another song with Daniel Ranwoy. Putting out a song with one of my good friends, Holly. She's this amazing, gorgeous pop EDM, sort of
DJ producer, and I'll be working with her. So that's gonna be a lot of girl power fun. But apart from that, I am also spearheading this really awesome YouTube series that hasn't quite happened yet, but it is definitely in the works. There's a lot coming together for it. There's a lot of support for it, especially from a really awesome foundation called the Foundation Fighting Blindness. But what this,
Excellent.
and I'm going to go into it really quickly. I don't want to give away too much, but basically in 2020, it was when my vision really started to plummet very quickly. And so turns out I am just trying to stay fabulous every day, all the time. And how am I going to do that if I can't see? So the series will focus on me learning how to do things like my hair, my makeup, like really cool things, cooking, anything.
Brilliant.
Before I lose my vision completely.
Wow, oh man, that's going to be amazing. Sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's going to be,
really,
I'm already excited.
It's going to be great for people who are in that similar situation, but also it's something that you don't think of these things. Like someone, I wouldn't think of these things,
Right.
That is,
right.
So it'd be interesting just for people just to see that and watch that.
Just to see that. But I mean, there's going to be a ton of guests. I mean, I'm going to be talking to like prominent blind figures, prominent figures in all aspects of like diversity and marginalization. So it's going to be informative as well. So I'm hoping people really enjoy it and tune in and have a lot of fun. And maybe they can find some of my new music on the way as well.
Absolutely. That's brilliant. Brilliant. Right. There's a couple of, I've got proper, I'd ask you some proper questions now.
You are a real journalist. All journalists are pretend journalists. Don't tell any of my journalist friends that.
I'm a musician pretending to be a journalist.
Okay.
But this is there's a dream gig is the question I always ask, and it's you're on first, and then there's someone after you, and there's someone headlining. This can be anybody from any time period, anyone in history. There are no boundaries whatsoever. So who's on the gig? You're opening, and there's someone after you, and there's a headline.
I went to one of the best concerts that was put on by Erykah Badu, and it was packed. Fans were going crazy, and just the excitement just remained. First of all, she was like 2 hours late. And she cut her gig short, but we didn't care. We were just so enamored, and we're like, she's there! Oh my god, come back out! So I would love to open for her. Like the fans are a bit rabid there.
You probably have a longer set if you're opening for her as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, is she here? All right, guys, one more go. So that would be a lot of fun. And who else would I like to share the stage with? That's a very good question. I have so many answers, but a lot of my answers.
You only know one. You know one more. See, I'm going to put my foot down on this. I insist. Only one more. It could be anybody from history, anybody at all.
Anybody at all.
It's your dream. It's your dream gig. You get to choose.
It's a dream. It's not real. Okay, so it's
not real. No, this is a dream. This is a dream.
Well, I would probably, who else I actually really admire and look up to, is it's like this publicly, but like pre-crazy some of the most inspiring to me, like as I was just a kid listening to her stuff, and it was just every day. I didn't buy many albums. I've only bought like 4 albums in my whole life, and hers was one of them, like CDs, you know what I mean?
That was just massive.
It was groundbreaking, and it was
a mess.
Can
you hear it now? It still sounds. Her voice is just. amazing as well. So that
you can't top it. You can't top the lyricism, the poetry, the flow, just the whole thing. And there was just so much heart there that's just not, you just don't see a lot of.
Yeah. Well, that's a brilliant choice. It's a brilliant choice. I 100% would definitely buy a ticket for that.
Yes.
I get 2 hours of you, 20 minutes of Erica Badu.
15 minutes of Lauryn Hill. I mean, Erica Badu, and 15 minutes of Lauryn Hill. Because, but
yes, yeah, that's brilliant. That's a good answer. I like that. And my other one is recommendation. You've already sort of dropped some recommendations for us during the interview anyway, but we'll just do one formal recommendation for somebody that people need to know. This can be anybody that maybe who you're friends with, you want to give them a shout out, or it could be somebody who has influenced you over the years. It can be whichever way you want to take it. It's just somebody that people need to know.
Somebody that people need to know. Wow, that's a interesting one.
This Need to Know music show, you see, what we
is do. That what
that's the name of the show, the Need to Know music show. It's very clever.
Yes,
very clever
you
turnaround.
Really put a lot of thought into it. No, just you know, I think that I want to continue to support my brothers and sisters in disability and recommend a person that has a disability. There's so many people that I want to say right now, but I think that I may stick with, just say, she'll be a fun one. She's good. So Gaylyn, Gaelyn. Her name is Gaylyn Lee, Lea. She is a violinist and a vocalist, and she has, I'm not exactly sure what her mobile, and she's one of those people that uses the pedals. I believe, you know how when you sing a vocal loop and then you over it.
Yeah, the loop pedals.
She does, she does loop pedals with her violin, and then she does vocal pedal looping as well. So it's just a whole bunch of noise, music, and beautiful sort of circular sounds. And then she's also a huge activist. She plays a lot on NPR. And it's kind of sad because she just kind of started touring only in and then the pen is her publicist. She does Sunday showcases, so just find her on YouTube or something. Her name is Gaylyn Lee. She's a great activist, and she's pretty good. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Good luck with everything you're doing. It sounds like there's some brilliant stuff to look forward to.
Yeah.
Some great work. And the YouTube series sounds brilliant. And good luck with all the activism work, all the advocacy that you're doing. It's some great work. And is there anything you want to plug? And so far, just give another
yeah plug. For sure. First of all, you can find me at Lachi Music, LACHIMUSIC, but find me on Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, and we are going to be starting our YouTube series Offbeat towards the end of March, with sort of a kickoff shout out at the Foundation Fighting Blindness Gala on the 26th, hosted by Kevin Nealon, and I'll be performing at it. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So join us there. Find me on YouTube at Lachi Music and smash that subscribe button, guys. Thank you so much for having me on this. I'm really excited. And this was actually a really, really fun interview.
It's been a lot of fun having you, and so grateful that you took some time out to come and chat to us.
Yes.
I mean, it's been an amazing journey listening to your music as well, and long may it continue. To keep smashing out those hits. Okay.
Awesome.
Thanks,
thank you.
Cheers,
thank you so
care.
much. You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.